Welcome to the Nutrimedical Report, and joining us for the LaRouche Foundation, we have Michael Kirsch and a number of amazing topics. Michael, tell us the main areas of expertise you deal with daily at the LaRouche Foundation.
All right, good to be here. Hello there.
Yeah, so tell us the latest areas of expertise that you cover at the LaRouche Foundation.
Well, what I'm doing right now, I'm the principal author of a LaRouche PAC special report, NAWAPA 21, which stands for the 21st Century Version of the North American Water and Power Alliance.
Oh, that's right.
And this report is there an echo?
I can't hear the echo. Maybe they can. Hopefully at the studio it's mainly just in your phone line.
No, please, I'm working on it.
Yeah, please continue.
I can call back on a different phone.
No, it's okay. Keep going because they're working on it at the studio.
Okay, so what we have here is a threefold plan in this report, and I have been the principal author because what we're proposing is an economic recovery plan for the United States, and we've been working on it for a couple of years, something that Americans out there can see when they see it completed and they see the outline of it, would put enough of the economy in motion such that we'd also be able to restore the nation's finances by restoring the public credit as a source of investment at the same time. And at the same time, solve our long-term water and resource security problems in the United States. And in this report, we outline every single category of employment and job that would be involved and the full scope of crisis in the West and how this plan, a continental flood and drought control plan called NAWAPA 21, would solve it.
Yeah, now this is the kind of project that puts back America on track, like the space project of the 1960s. And it also deals with a major problem in terms of climate change that's going to change the normal zones for growing food. Much of the desert areas of the West would bloom. We would have a massive movement of population to the western areas of the United States. It would open up a lot of new industries. And it would also open up ecosystems to stabilize ecosystems for a lot of the plants and animals. A lot of people that are pseudo-environmentalists don't believe in redirecting water. And I'd like you to explain how you counter that in your arguments.
Well, what we're talking about is the real green movement here. This water, this would be 11% of the current runoff water of Alaska, British Columbia, and Yukon. And in the 1960s, the Canadian government was far ahead of the United States government in realizing that we needed to go with this plan. And Prime Minister Lester B. Pearson of Canada said this would be one of the greatest events in our history to export water which is currently unused, and a percentage of it, 11% of these three states and provinces, we would direct the water south, letting the rest of it flow in its normal directions, and we would then create this continuous basically reservoir system utilizing the natural topographical system of the Rocky Mountains. And therefore, the impact is actually in order of magnitude less as far as dams and so forth than would be if we were to do simply local stopgap solutions all over the place. And people are very clear right now in the United States that we have put this kind of continental management off for now about 50 years, and people realize we need a solution that will encompass all the problems and give us alternative to just start moving people out of the Southwest. And what this water would do would increase irrigated land by 19 million acres and replenish the flows, the Rio Grande, the Colorado River, and essentially create, first using the normal mountain system, and then a series of canals and tunnels to, yes, make the deserts bloom, but in a way which is coordinated through an authority of how the water will be used for certain kinds of land cover to affect the most desired change in climate and the most amount of food.
Plus also to recharge the Ogallala Aquifer, which is being reduced at an enormous rate. And there is an end to this, which is basically the end of the food basket of America. So we have to recharge the Ogallala Aquifer, and we're under the gun to get this done.
Right now, the plan does not include a recharge of the aquifer in the proposed full detailed plan, but we do have an addition to it, which would be to pump water slightly above Fort Randall Dam into the Niobrara River of Nebraska, and up 300 miles would then at about 2,100 feet would then let the water drain, gravity flow through the plain states, irrigating 6 to 10 million acres, and add 10 million acre feet a year of water to those states, which are all sitting on top of that Agulal aquifer. And as you say, 30% of our food in the United States comes from irrigation water that's pumped out of the ground. This is now a gravity flow surface addition that will double, if we think about the last 100 years, we've relied off of 32 million acre feet of water with the Sacramento, San Joaquin, Rio Grande, and Colorado River combined. This would more than double the surface water available as a permanent addition. We're not bringing icebergs down. We're linking into a rainfall cycle in the north and capturing the water, which before it quickly becomes salt water, and bringing it down as a permanent addition, which we'll now see for the next 100 years available as we also employ things like water desalination, other kinds of weather-changing things we can bring in.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this also is going to change the weather in the area. It'll increase the rainfall. It'll also allow increased tourism. It'll bring in new sources of materials so that if you have water, also you can bring in other types of industry as well, which requires water besides just agriculture. Many other industries require an adequate source of water, and the population. Right now, water is the main limiting factor for population growth in the southwest United States.
Exactly. The National Intelligence Estimate has been asked by the State Department to produce a report, or I should say that was their report, the name of it. The intelligence community was asked to put out this report, and what they did is they chose certain rivers around the world that they could see which would become a source of conflict and fights and environmental terrorism and things like that. What they didn't do is they didn't include other rivers, such as in Africa they left out the Congo, which is a huge wet area which could be diverted into the north in Sudan, making Africa a breadbasket for Africa. Same in the United States. They didn't include the wasted runoff water of the north. And what this would do is we need to look at this kind of thing, because the general assumption is we're going to have to just continue to reuse the same amount of water over and over, less and less. And you're right. It's the only plan on the books which is an alternative to moving our citizens out of the Southwest. And I think there's a lot of people in the United States who would like to see this plan and realize the impact that it can have on the country as a whole. I just want to say exactly what you say. The recycling, hydrologists have found that water that is irrigated, used for irrigation, does recycle itself because it evaporates after it goes through the plant. And it evaporates not once, but multiple times before it makes it back to the ocean. And the wildlife will be huge. The national parks will be huge. You know, in 1965, when we built Lake Powell increased the recreational shoreline. It had more recreational shoreline of this one reservoir than the entire West Coast, from Washington State down to California.
That's
and
amazing.
That's because, and Arizona had more recreational boating than any state in the entire country.
That's actually funny, isn't it? It's
yeah, right.
Yeah, and it shows, for example, most people don't realize is one of the biggest boating states is Oklahoma because of the Army Corps of Engineers. The amount of lakes in Oklahoma is mind-boggling. If anybody from there hasn't gone to Oklahoma, doesn't realize it's crisscrossed with all kinds of very advanced lakes made by the Army Corps of Engineers.
And that brings up another point. You know, what we've done, we put a video together based on this original plan. We then interviewed a lot of guys who worked on projects like this, and one of them was a guy named John Sparlin, who was an economist for the Army Corps, and he built the inland Oklahoma waterway, 400 longest inland waterway in the United States in the 1970s, and he could attest to that fact.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing information. Michael Kirsch, LaRouche Foundation, LaRouche, LaRouchePAC.com, LaRouchePUB.com, the Executive Intelligence Review. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and again, our orders line is 888-212-8871. I want to thank all those people that support the Nutrimedical Report and get all the information out to the truth. Also, take care of your own health, the health of your relatives and friends. The consults currently are free For all of our customers and all the people that listen to the program and purchase even just one product, you can get an email or a phone consultation from myself directly, Dr. Bill Deagle, to help you get on your natural wellness protocol. Michael, we have another topic, this issue of NAWAPA, which they can see a full disclosure and video information on at the LaRouche website, is tied directly to a bank restructuring. And as I mentioned on the show yesterday when I was on my show and also an interview, which I do on a Tuesday evening on the Rents program, I would like to see a deal made with the current Republican candidate, the man with probably Asperger's autism, Mr. Romney, if he does get the presidential position, that he makes a deal that, number one, Ron Paul becomes the head of the Federal Reserve, or someone that Ron Paul approves. And we need to restructure the finances, because this country shouldn't be going down the toilet or passing the billions or trillions of dollars of money to fund bankers, which contracts credit. We need to move back, as you said in the organization, the LaRouche Foundation, to a Hamiltonian credit system that rebuilds the infrastructure of the country, that rebuilds the environment to increase not only ecosystems but jobs, and also changes the geoengineers, literally the climate of North America, to make it more conducive to a wonderful life. And the restructuring of the banking system is part of that whole process. Explain how this is all tied together.
Well, I'd like to direct people to a video that I have on our site, which is, you're going to find this report, NAWAPA 21, on the page, which is LaRouchePAC.com/NAWAPA XXI, which is NAWAPA 21. This is something which I have on there, the video called the Dear Ron Paul Supporter. And the reason I go through it is because something that we need to realize is the difference between the Federal Reserve and the first and second national banks under first Hamilton and second John Quincy Adams, and particularly run by Nicholas Biddle. This was a credit function of the government for which the Constitution was actually embodied with certain powers. And the United States was founded to channel the resources of the country as a whole so that there could be credit behind what the government did. And the National Bank was the means by which the credit of the nation could be directed, and the government's own organization of the resources of the country through tariffs and other taxes could then be put behind and coordinated with the loaning of the bank, and such that we could always be achieving a greater construction in the future and organize our finances like that. It's important for people to understand right now. We don't have to choose between Romney and Obama, and I know people think it's late in the game, but people who are listening, the point here is, what we're looking at is we've got a plan, a master plan in this report, that even at this late date, we can form a national interest committee of patriots who see that we have a plan reminiscent of our great acts, something that Kennedy and his brother had both intended to do. Bobby Kennedy was a co-sponsor of Frank Moss's bill on this thing. Also something that can restore the nation's credit by putting enough into motion that we can tie the assets after Glass-Steagall reorganization of the banking system that are still valid, and other debt that we want to put in. State, municipal debt, perhaps some of the debt from China, whatever the capital stock of this new national bank will be, in addition to the collected taxes of the nation, and in addition to maybe some kind of greenback issue we can put in there, whatever we need for the investment of NAWAPA 21, we'll have enough to channel toward that. Now, it's important that people realize if they've got a money problem, the solution is on a scale like this. If you want money and you need money, what we need a top-down national bank reorganization. And unfortunately, Ron Paul would not be the best pick of this right now, because what's not understood by most of what he's saying is the difference between what John Quincy Adams and Biddle were doing, what Hamilton was doing with James Wilson and Robert Morris, versus the kind of corrupt Jacksonian, Van Buren, traitorous Aaron Burr activity, which Wall Street and the Federal Reserve simply continued.
Yeah, the first step, of course, is to get rid of the Federal Reserve by taking it over, having U.S. Treasury coin money, and you're right, setting up a central U.S. bank. Also, one of the things I think is that it should be a state statute that every state that doesn't have a bank should have a Bank of California, like the Bank of North Carolina or the Bank of North Dakota. I think it's very important that we don't have these highly leveraged banks that are literally printing money and giving it to international resources like the European Central Bank or these other banks, basically diluting the money and literally transferring credit that could be used to rebuild the infrastructure of America. This whole restructuring needs to happen.
It's absolutely ridiculous, and we have a very limited window of opportunity because what the finance ministers who met with this IMF meeting just last week here in D.C. and New York, they said, in D.C., they said, we have a $9 trillion deficit. What we need is actually $9 trillion.
Right.
Maybe they publicly said $4 trillion. But this whole thing could go down at any moment. And the window of opportunity is how much time we've got before we can educate enough people in the state houses, the Congress, of how the national banking reorganization, tied with a plan like this, can work. And that's what we outline here in this report. And people can find that on our website, the NAWAPA 21 Special Report.
Now, one of the things is the time window, and there's a couple of, as you say, wild card issues that could blow this, which means we may not have as much time as we think. We've got the danger of a Mideast war, a preemptive attack on Iran, which is on again, off again. We've got the situation of the so-called Arab Spring, which is a massaged revolution by the West and by the Arab Spring, by the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a London-based organization founded in 1928 that's Masonic. We've got the collaboration to kind of start a Sunni Shiite war, which will choke off the oil supply because we haven't yet transitioned to other alternative energy. Things like NAWAPA, for example, will take a lot of energy to build it, but it also can generate a lot of hydroelectric power as well.
Oh, yeah.
And not only that, we've got a geothermal area. There's a geothermal zone all the way from Jasper, Alberta, to Casper, Wyoming. Over 1,200 miles of geothermal that could generate enough power to power the United States, just with the geothermal energy plants and plasma distribution lines to the rest of the United States. There's no use for us having nuclear reactors unless they're tokamak fusion reactors or thorium or pebble bed reactors with buckyball filters to make sure there's no tritium or radioisotopes that come out, and they should never be built near fault lines. This is crazy what we're doing right now. Bad policy, bad planning.
What we have is we have a short window here where we can see a national interest group. We're not looking for a different candidate. What we're looking for is to define the issues of the presidency, how this country should be organized with a reorganization with Glass-Steagall, then the issuing of enough credit and tying of valid debts, funding those debts without budget cuts with a national bank reorganization and NAWAPA. And a champion can come forward even at this late date, and we can put something in motion for the next presidency, which is not these two choices. It's a question of creating this alternative with a master plan, and that's what we've got in this report.
Exactly. Amazing. Back in just a moment. Welcome back. Lots of other issues to talk about. The disappearance from the political landscape of Angela Merkel and the failure in the recent run-up elections of Mr. Sarkozy. Angela Merkel and Sarkozy being the architects of keeping the Eurozone going, which is the game. And, of course, the game is to try to start a war, a proxy war with Russia and China, which is what they're pushing, and there's no logical sense for it. In fact, Iran and Israel should be natural allies rather than enemies. What we see right now is totally insanity. We have Netanyahu literally bouncing around like some kind of a barroom bouncer, ready to pick a fight with nations that really don't want to go to war with him. And Russia and China are begging them to stop it, including the Saudi Arabian-sponsored invasion and attack of Syria. And we back Al-Qaeda and these maniacs that were terrorists and murderers in Tunisia and Libya, and yet Obama tries to act like he's a good guy, and this is just pure insanity, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the main point, and I'll just comment on what you just said, but the main point here is anybody who is thinking that they have to choose between Obama and Romney is thinking small-minded, because this world situation is exactly as you described. On the one hand, we've got this this massive drive for war since last summer when Putin and Medvedev said, hey, guess what, guys? We're not opposing each other, and we're going for full national development, kicked Kudrin out, and now that Russia has just set up this Far East Development Corporation covering 60% of the territory, and it's only accountable to Putin. And they're going to be able to hand out mining licenses bypassing the local regulations because they're going for massive development, Bering Strait, everything. And since then, we've seen this push, assassination of Gaddafi, the unleashing of the drones, and then immediate, we're going to throw over Assad. We don't care if Al-Qaeda is working with the opposition. Now, in the Congress, there's a resolution, House Resolution 107, sponsored by Walter Jones, co-sponsored by another Republican, which simply states, it's one sentence, it's one paragraph, says, if the president goes to war against a country under which we're not under attack by, without following the War Powers Resolution and getting permission from Congress, this will be an impeachable offense.
Right,
and this is driving people crazy because it's simply saying if you violate the Constitution, we got to impeach them. And so here we're not need to be thinking about November right now. What we need to be thinking is, one, yes, preventing confrontation with China and Russia, which is the plan of the British system, because they know the Euro's finished. As you say, Merkel, Sarkozy, he just lost his first round of the elections, and Merkel and Sarkozy are the architects of this Euro bailout. They're trying to set up a European Stability Fund, which makes it illegal for any country to deny putting the collected taxes and the revenues of governments into the bailout fund. They cannot get out of it once they enter into the treaty. It's even worse than this Lisbon Treaty. It's once they get into the treaty of this new thing, they have to bail everything.
That was proposed last week. And already Hollande is moving forward in the French elections because he's already saying he's not going to accept this arrangement, which means that this so-called treaty they're proposing will allow nations to be on the hook for immediately $700 billion equivalent U.S., soon 1.4 quadrillion, and a never-ending, bottomless black hole pit to pour in cash from...
And the only point you need to get... Well, the only point you need to get from that is that they're finished. Their system's done. They're trying to get people to contract to, slit their own throat because they know that the whole thing's coming down. They're adding a little provision on there that dissidents in the parliaments of, Germany, France, etc., they were not going to be called on. And you can have a thing where as a dissident against the majority cannot actually legally speak. So they're trying to this massive austerity to try to save their system, which is coming down. Who wants to think about November? A Romney versus Obama? We should be going for one impeachment of this guy, the whole violations of everything he's doing constitutionally. This is now threatening and coming to a head. And the recent thing he just did at this Holocaust Museum, setting up this atrocity group, he's the real atrocity. This is a complete violation. System's coming down. And so we need to get something in motion and find a champion who will come forward with the right policies, and let's focus on those and not try to find somebody who's going to replace these two bad options. Let's get the process in motion for impeachment. Glass-Steagall immediately threw as a firewall against this Eurozone collapse rather than bailing out the banks and perpetuating that.
Yeah, in fact, it's going to make the issues of the election pretty irrelevant. Whoever is going to be, quote, elected as the president. And Congress needs to actually start doing their duty, which means they need to review and remove from the bench Supreme Court justices that violate the Constitution dealing with Obamacare. We need to have the Congress start doing the impeachment proceedings against Obama because he's violating so many different portions of the Constitution, not only the War Powers Act, but many of the other things he's done. And his actions and statements, this man needs to be removed from office. He also shows signs of what I call mental illness. He shows a form of megalomania and narcissism that in a leader is a very dangerous combination. This is the Nero syndrome that I think LaRouche talks about many times. And
yes, exactly. And if people would be able to see that, if they weren't so dang interested in their own personal tiny little interest, and this is what Jacksonism caused in this country, was this partisan politics, my issue rather than the national development of the country and the principles of the Constitution and infrastructure and science that make that possible. And people like John Quincy Adams at the time, when they saw what Jackson was going to do, that's what they hated. And they knew that what would destroy this country and cause a civil war is this partisan politic crap. And what we need right now is this National Interest Committee focusing on how the Constitution was used with a national bank and how Roosevelt approximated that with the Reconstruction Finance Corporation and pushing these guys out on the basis of violating Constitution and war, which is around the war, not worrying about whether you're a Democrat or Republican. And Andrew Jackson and what he did in this populist uprising against taxes and some kind of return to the cowboy mentality is a wrong view of history. And we outline that somewhat in our special report there. People can find that and other supporting videos on the website.
Exactly. Now, the solutions have to happen in a very rapid sequence. And it sounds like you have a pretty concrete idea, and the Foundation has many different experts that have been led by the leadership of Lyndon LaRouche and his wife. What I would say to summarize would be that, number one, Obama needs to be impeached. Number two, we need to immediately start measures to try to protect our banks from a collapse in Europe. We have 5 major exposed banks, for example, that if the European Central Stability Mechanism, which is basically a guarantee of failure, does collapse, which I think in the next 3, 6, 12 months is virtually guaranteed that it's going to happen. It's like hearing the creaking sound of a building that's already had demolition, but it hasn't yet fallen. That if we don't set up that firewall, as you say, we're going to have major depression, not just recession here in America. We also have to realize that what we need to do is some of the measures we've taken in fighting an economic war with Syria and Iran have forced now Russia and China to deal with Iran by setting up bilateral treaties. They have their own financial arrangements now to use their own regional currencies. And we've actually exacerbated the destruction of the dollar, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a continual downshift in the living standard of the United States. And it's basically a reoccupation by the British Empire with these bailouts. But let me just say, also in summary, we have a concrete plan of how we want to put together this National Interest Committee. We want you to read the report, but then we have a resolution we're getting, which is something that's designed for companies, city councils, state houses, Congress, everyone. If you're a organized group, to, when you read the report, endorse the plan, Glass-Steagall, National Banking, and NAWAPA, to introduce a resolution in your group. If you're the head of a tunnel boring company, cement factories, crane industries, look at the figures, how this is going to transform and benefit you, and how we can build something for the next generation, and put this resolution through.
Yeah, amazing.
And that's on our website.
A real plan with real steps to do to make the future bright. Back in a moment. Welcome back, and with Michael Kesha, and I want to turn this a little bit. There's a very discreet plan on LaRouchePAC.com, which I really like the idea, because then it's like when you set up a thesis and you're a scientist among other scientists. In a sense, Lyndon LaRouche is one of the great minds, and his wife and his whole team of experts like yourself, Sky Shields, Harley Schlanger, Cody Jones, all of these experts, yourself, basically wise minds that have come together to put together a plan. You can literally taste it. You can see that there is a real solution. And when we have the danger, for example, we had a major asteroid that literally exploded the size of probably an RV over middle California and headed in toward Arizona, exploded over the Sierra Mountains. They could hear it for several hundred miles. What people should be aware of is the chance of a nearest object striking the Earth is about 30 times more because of the area of space that contains much more debris. We're passing through the galactic plane. We're about to pass into what's called the northern side of the plane, which is a different torsion field. The reason why there's so many earthquakes and volcanoes is because the actual structure of time-space changes, which changes the operation of plasma in the stars and the planets, and the Earth itself is a giant nuclear reactor, which is why it didn't cool at 1.5 billion years. It's still hot at 5 billion years old. And what we need to realize is we, as an advanced species, should come together on the planet with these projects, and they would also transcend a lot of the geopolitical and religious issues, and we would deal with things that are really could be extinction-level events, such as major ice ages, which by itself could kill more people than even a nuclear war, the danger of near-Earth objects that could wipe out an area the size of Paris or France with an object. For example, this one's the size of an RV, but if that was the size of, let's say, a cruise boat, it would take out France. Now, people need to understand that. They really need to understand that we are in an area where the climate's changing, the magnetic field of the Earth is changing dramatically. There's an increase in background ultraviolet C and D cancer, or D for death radiation, the ultraviolet light. There's an increase in background cosmic radiation. There's increased changes in the geomagnetosphere that even puts our satellites outside the Van Allen radiation belt and fries them. It also puts danger for our astronauts and even our robots that are not hardened against cosmic background radiation that can fry their microcircuits, so we need to build radiation-proof robots. And in fact, if we do have them, and we had them, we would have solved a year ago the problem at Fukushima. So going out into space provides solutions so we can survive on Earth. And people need to understand that it needs to be also open rather than like under Obama, where they close the NASA space projects and it goes black op. That really pisses me off, that they went black op with our space projects.
Well, they're also just shutting down. You know, we have a weather report on our website by Peter Martinson recently. He goes through the different load capability of the Saturn V rocket and what the Orion program was going to do with the even bigger Ares rocket. And all these capacities have been being taken down. Shutting down the Orion program really means we can't get things into space at all. And what you're talking about here is looking at the planet and the scale at which the principles that define weather, the water cycle, all the various cycles, the interaction of the magnetic field and the magnetosphere and the solar wind and all of these things are on a scale which the planet is operating. The biosphere is developed, and we should at least be operating on that scale.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So the kind of systems that we need to be put into motion, people want to talk about basically the question of basin transfers, how we affect the weather, should we do it or not. Well, we should at least be operating on that scale. But just to respond to what you open up with, we are a policy institute outlining and proposals outside of the restrictions which individual groups and institutions who are trying to get their individual project finance operating. And we're looking at how we would need to do it if we could do it with a government restored with real powers and according to what needs to be done scientifically. So we put together these proposals at our institution. You describe us as wise individuals, but it's also a policy-making group, and we've studied to put forward a comprehensive plan both for the immediate need of putting this economy and the generation that built something in this country back to work, building up the infrastructure well enough in the water system. As you say, we could, in the next 50 years, and even the next 25 years, and if we could even use more advanced technologies of tunnel boring, this project could probably take only 20 years, to create a system in which floods and droughts and fires and things like this could be regulated. So
well, the fact
the last
is tunnel
wacky
boring
weather that we saw over the last 2 years wouldn't have actually been such a problem, and it would be something like turning down the AC in your house, as you said.
Here's one of the things that's going on that I find particularly distressing. If you're in various compartments of the government, part of the problem with our government and the world corporations is that things have gone black op or corporate, as Eisenhower said back in the 50s. Beware of the military-industrial intelligence complex. And that also means corporations are already taking over technology, so it's not available to other corporations, the public, science, or medicine. And so, for example, Bechtel Corporation. Bechtel Corporation is one of the largest corporations on earth, and they have things that are far more powerful for tunneling than the tunnel machine that created the English Channel. They have what's called sodium-cooled nuclear reactors that can literally hit the rock face with impact lasers, blow the debris in the sidewalls, and create an obsidian core at the rate of now of 14 miles per day. Okay, that's actual classified technology, and I know there's 3 questions that are asked when people come on my show. They ask 3 questions, and this is transcripts go to Homeland Security, the FBI, CDC, etc., and they ask, number 1, who does Dr. Deagle have on the program? Number 2, what questions do they ask? And number 3, how do they know these? The fact is, some of the time we have experts on that come under pseudonyms or in the Pentagon or other agencies. I have contacts everywhere. I've been in these places. I know a lot of things firsthand, and I can tell you, we already have off-the-shelf technology that could redirect water, create plasma distribution networks, use geothermal energy. For example, Japan should have never built nuclear reactors. It should all have been geothermal energy and wind energy. Northern Japan is very windy. The same here in America. We have a geothermal zone from Jasper, Alberta, all the way to Casper, Wyoming. There's all kinds of areas, for example, offshore, just going down 400 meters, you can put a what's called a wave turbine that'll give you continuous energy that can generate amazing amounts of energy along the coast. It wouldn't interfere with the biosphere or do anything negative. The fact is, our policies are driving us toward disaster, and the Earth changes are going to actually create a situation where we're going to have massive food shortages. We also have the disaster of Fukushima. Maybe in the last minutes we can talk about that. If we pulled off the shelf from DARPA and other projects in other countries like Russia and elsewhere, technology to deal with this disaster, because it's not over. This is completely different than Chernobyl, where the reactor was not properly cooled and it blew up and separated the nuclear material. What we're dealing with here is where the nuclear material, after the tsunami and earthquake, and the earthquake, by the way, broke reactor number 1, so it went critical immediately, even before the tsunami struck. Plus the Diane plant and other plants in Japan were destroyed or damaged, which is why they're down to 1 reactor that'll go offline in May. What we really
need is a government that's going to be able to use the powers that it has, and that's what citizens need to know is, I mean, even if these technologies are public, the problem is that the government, without using the powers that it has used under the best presidencies of our history, under things like JQA, Lincoln, FDR, and so on, they're useless. Because we're a nation with...
We need a congressional move to force the disclosure of these technologies from corporations and for special agencies that are called Warehouse 13, so that we can open up NAWAPA. And we don't take decades to do it. I'm saying
the key thing is whether these technologies are there or not. The issue is the government has to actually act like a government and not a bunch of patsies to the finances.
The
other thing I'd say is on the question of environmentalism, you've got to watch out on the question of anti-nuclear power.
No, I'm not against it. No. Let me clarify this, okay? Let me clarify this before we.
I'm just saying the news drum up around the Fukushima thing was such a clear opportunistic move by all of those who want to reduce the world's population and restrict
it's not a matter of getting rid of that.
Technology.
It's moving to safe nuclear fusion technology, Tomahawk reactors, thorium reactors and pebble bed, not relicensing old style technology or leaving open reactors.
In the meantime, we've got enough nuclear waste that we could have for 800 years of the U.S. economy power grid.
Yeah, but we need to get rid of old technology. It's dangerous, especially with earth changes, with 75% within the strike zone of earthquakes and fault lines. I'm not against nuclear. I'm against old nuclear that's bad technology.
The thing is that how many people actually die with this Fukushima thing?
A whole lot. And, it's going to be really bad. I'm an expert on it when we can discuss it in other programs. It's a major worldwide catastrophe. Thanks for coming on, Michael Kirsch. We'll have you back on soon. Hour 2 coming up in just a moment.